Welcome back to the Gun Collective, boys and girls. We're doing a little bit of a live thing here with my buddy Jared from Guns and Gadgets. Jared, how are you, bud?
Good, man. Nice to virtually see you.
Yeah, right. We saw each other at GunCon. That was amazing, right?
Yeah, good time. Real fun time. Can't wait to the next one.
Unfortunately, we have to talk about gun politics today. But before we get into that, guys, I want to encourage you to go down to the video description and check out the link to Blackout Coffee. They are supporting this video today, blackoutcoffee.com/TGC. Go buy our Tenacity roast. That blend is amazing. It's got a little bit of extra jolt, low acidity. It's good. And you can also check out Jared's signature blends over there. You got 2A, you've got a bunch of different stuff. There's endless amounts of flavors over there. So go check it out, blackoutcoffee.com/TGC. Okay. So before I preface this, I want to make sure that everybody at home understands that TGC is trying to keep you guys up to date on political stuff with guns, and it is next to impossible to cover everything. So we brought the man that does somehow seem to cover everything. Jared has an enormous amount of content on this stuff. So go find his channel, Guns and Gadgets, on YouTube. He's about to break 500K subscribers, which is amazing. And Jared, let's rewind. Right, it was like right around the time GunCon was happening. There was a big national push for gun control. Break it down for the people. Tell us what happened.
Sure. So to simplify it, there was a bill that the Senate had to have. It was bipartisan, quote unquote. They needed at least 10 Republicans, rhinos, to get to 60 votes so they could, bypass the filibuster, thus send it to the House. And what it was centered upon was red flag funding. They know that it is unconstitutional and illegal, and they wouldn't be able to pass one federally. So what they're doing is they're coming up with bribe money. I'm sorry, did I say that? Yeah, bribe money or grants, so that if a state does produce its own red flag law, then they will receive funding from the government as an attaboy in order to push their agenda. And
How
then
is that
coupled
legal?
with
Is that like that doesn't sound legal to me?
it's not. It's the red flag laws are the biggest single risk we have to the Second Amendment. It subverts all of our rights in the Bill of Rights. It violates just about everything you could possibly think of. But until it actually gets before the Supreme Court, and Justice Alito has begged to get one, they're going to try to get away with what they can, just like they did with the Bruin case.
I think I mean I meant more of like the hey, we'll fund you if you create this unconstitutional law kind of crap. That's the thing that concerns me. But I mean, yes, red flag laws are atrocious. Go support Hold My Guns if you want to learn how that's supposed to work, self-governance and all that. But
Right.
the red flag laws are nonsense. And the fact that the federal government can say, hey, we're going to give you a little bit of extra money if you create this unconstitutional nonsense, like what the hell? What the
Yeah,
hell?
it's an agenda talking point. An emotion yanker, especially as we get closer to November. Everybody, you're going to start hearing more about guns are bad and we need to do what we can and common sense gun reform and all of the red button topics. And you're going to hear more of that as we get closer to November.
Okay. So essentially what we have now is the building blocks for either the tower to topple one way or another. It seems
Right.
like the foundation for tyranny is being reinforced here with this sort of thing. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes and no. I think we should, before we go further on that, we absolutely have to say the good side. You got June 23rd, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus
Right, yeah.
Bruin opinion dropped. And what that did was shattered the pillars of gun control nationwide. They changed the previous two-step process to figure out if they could squeeze a gun control law in or make it constitutional. Clarence Thomas said absolutely not. The only test that applies is the text of the Second Amendment, which we all should know, and then history and tradition. So,
Wow.
to surmise it, if it's not written in the Second Amendment, which we know all of the gun control isn't because it clearly says shall not be infringed, or if it's something that has not been historical or tradition in this country, then it violates the Second Amendment. So
Wow.
now we're seeing all of the offending states try to get creative on ways to create a what they're calling sensitive places, so they can try to say, "Oh, this is historical because we've been doing it since 1901," but that's not the history that the Supreme Court was referring to.
So I mean, could one argue that the Gun Control Act is not historical? Could we argue that the ATF in general is not historical? Like, where does that end? Do we know?
And that's the best part of this. What remains to be seen, because when the Supreme Court makes a decision, it sets off a chain reaction. There
Okay.
were a bunch of anti-gun cases that were waiting on this case. A lot of them came out of California. We have assault weapon bans, magazine bans, gun rosters, FOIDs now that are called into question,
The FOID
ammunition
card.
background checks. All those things now have been GVR'd, which is they were granted certiorari. They were vacated, the decisions were vacated, and they were remanded back to lower courts to be reheard based off of
Wow.
the Bruen case. So we're going to see a lot of those gun control cases fall because they're not in the text and they're not based on history and tradition, because our forefathers never banned any type of gun. They didn't say you can't bring a gun to a certain spot. We all know that. So they're seeing their world shatter, and there's a lot of money on the gun control side. It's a very lucrative business. So now they're trying to, like you said, they're trying to establish a new pillar, and this new pillar is this sensitive place that they are latching onto that was in the Bruen decision, but they have to prove that these have been something that's been historical and traditional. So when it comes to the ATF or the NFA or the Hughes Amendment and stuff like that, where will the courts say our history and tradition starts when they start to look at these cases and when
I
they're
mean,
challenged? That's what we
arguably, if we're saying the Second Amendment is the basis for all of this, arguably we have to consider that as the beginning of this history, right? Like,
right. Well,
to
we
my
all
mind, that's where we start. If we start at the establishment of the Second Amendment, 1791, right?
yes.
1791. So if we start then we start to stack all of these things that are not historical and tradition. All, by the way, all I can think of when you say "as is tradition" or something like that is the South Park episode with the royal wedding. It's in every "as is tradition" every time. So this is kind of, we've got this two sides of these things sort of coming together, and it's almost like, those movies, like superhero movies, where we've got this like laser coming at each other and there's just this big ball of energy waiting to
Right.
explode. That's what comes to my mind here. Holy crap, something is about to happen. It seems that way. It seems like the pendulum is not just swinging farther but faster. Would
Oh,
you agree?
absolutely. Absolutely. So since the Bruen decision, we've had some states come out and be defiant, turn their nose up at the Supreme Court, challenging them, passing gun control. We got California, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head, California, New York, New Jersey, Delaware,
Yep.
Rhode Island. They have all passed more gun control. There are other states, trying to win the race to do that as well. But we've also had the opposite happen. Maryland, yesterday, the governor said they're going to get rid of the good cause facet of their permitting process. And also yesterday, all of the restrictions that were on people's permits to carry were removed. Massachusetts has done similar, yet they're still holding on to a suitability section of our permitting laws, which basically says a chief can still deny you, even if you're not federally prohibited, just because they don't like something about you. And it's very gray. So expect some action on that. And I know there are challenges in a couple different courts by a couple different groups, and some that are also ready to kick off, where you're going to see some of these states slap back down a couple pegs. But it's a good time to be a pro Second Amendment person or pro freedom person, because the Bruen case brought us back towards the center when it comes to the Constitution, specifically the Second Amendment.
So how does this tie in? What I've been seeing in comment sections and things is this case in, I believe it's West Virginia,
Yes.
applying to the Second Amendment cases, and
Mhm.
it's an unrelated thing. Can you wade into that just a tiny bit?
Yeah, sure. So that case was West Virginia versus EPA, and it had to do with emissions and how the EPA, just similar to the ATF, decided they were going to be the king and be able to rule anything with a greenhouse gas or could affect said thing. So they were challenged. It went all the way to the Supreme Court, and it was ruling on a thing called chevron deference, which we have all heard before with the bump stock case. So chevron deference, real quick synopsis, is when there's a question about a rule or a policy, and they tend to give the leeway, the benefit of the doubt, if you will, to the organization that is overseeing said rule or policy.
Hmm.
ATF has always been favored for things against us, bump stocks and triggers and certain pistol braces, frames and receivers. Well, with that ruling in the EPA case, the Supreme Court said, no, you don't have that express power unless it is given to you by Congress, because Congress makes the law, not you. So while they didn't specifically address the Second Amendment cases in that decision, a wise attorney would absolutely say, hey, look what happened with the EPA. The ATF's doing the same thing. We're bringing that now in a brief based off of, Sixth Circuit has a bump stock case with GOA and Tim Harmsman. It could easily be brought up to destroy the chevron deference, which is what the previous decision leaned on when they said, you know what, yeah, we're going to keep the bump stock ban. So a lot of good things are happening on the side of the Second Amendment.
So, in theory, because of that chevron deference and ATF arguably just willy-nilly making laws up, I mean, could we see those decisions be reversed in short time, or is this like years out in these cases? What do you think?
Could be short term, because it literally all a court would have to do, especially if they have this case now remanded back to them or it's being challenged currently. All they have to do is ask for supplemental briefs based off of the EPA decision, and they can make their decision from that Supreme Court case. So it could go quick. Most likely, they kick it down the line as far as they can, as long as they can, just to make it as difficult as possible. Because, as you know, Chevron deference has been used to basically create a fourth branch of the government, a second lawmaking group, if you will, like all of the three-letter agencies, anything that's under the executive branch. When the president, no matter what party they're in, they can't get something done, they lean on the regulatory agencies to make sure it happens one way or another.
Wow. So, if we back up to a 30,000-foot view, could this in theory sort of be a reset in terms of balance of power?
Absolutely could, but it's going to be a fight to get it there, I'm sure.
I'm excited. It sucks because we are in the meantime sort of going through this turbulence of gun laws. Nationwide, things are changing at a pace that people cannot keep up with, which is another basis for an argument in court. If I don't remember the terminology, but this was something where if it's unreasonable for someone to follow that law because of the way it was enacted or something along those lines, in theory, that could be used as an argument in court. Like, hey, we just are changing things weekly. How could somebody be expected to follow these laws if this is happening at this pace?
Right, and that's the hope. That's what we hope happens. Obviously, sooner than later. But unfortunately, the way this country is structured, things take time for a reason, so that we don't lose the Constitution or rights based off of emotion in a quick period of time. So it will take a little bit of time, but I know we have some of the right groups and the right attorneys already working on it.
Absolutely do. I mean, speaking of the groups, I know FPC, I don't understand how they do this, but they seem to just have this spider web or like this root system into every state where they are just constantly suing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that works, but it's kind of impressive. Do they have any significant cases coming up right now?
One of the biggest ones, they just filed a brief in the Miller v. Bonta case, used to
Oh,
be
sure,
Miller v.
right.
Becerra, and that's California's assault weapon ban case. And they filed a brief that said, we want this stay because it's currently under a stay, meaning you can't buy those evil guns until we decide what we want to do in the Ninth Circuit. They're petitioning to remove the stay because now, based off the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin case, there is no legal standing because that decision was decided on the two-pronged test that Clarence Thomas said no longer applies. So there's a lot of good things that will happen in rapid succession here, and it's a good time to be alive.
What do you think is the fallout from that? When we think about unraveling one of the arguably worst sets of gun control in the nation, when you think about unraveling that from its core, what do you think is the fallout from that? California currently is one of the biggest markets for guns, even with that gun control. What do you think comes out of this? Is it crazy? What is it?
The amount of, so if you think it's hard to find certain models of firearms now, when states are told you can't ban these things anymore, there's going to be a run on them big time. So if you have an opportunity, buy them now. But even those people who have the bastardized versions, like the California compliant ones or the Massachusetts compliant, you can just buy now the pieces that might be able to be installed in a couple weeks or months, and just have those at ready and just make what you have now into a de-bastardized, deneutered rifle. So buy grips and magazine disconnect buttons and stuff like that.
Right. In case you guys are just joining us in this live session here, I need you to go over to Jared's channel, Guns and Gadgets, and get subscribed. He's on his way to 500,000 subscribers. We're hoping to see that break today. So go get subscribed over there. When this is done, I'll make sure to put a link in the description. Jared, is there anything that people can be doing? The viewer out there, like, what can they be doing to further this process and reinforce our belief in freedom? How does that work for them?
So first off, let's start at the groups that we all say, why isn't X, Y, and Z doing something in my state? The first thing they need is members in that state, because if they don't have members, then they can't sue on the behalf of their membership. They don't have standing. So join whatever group you think supports you. Join them. I have my favorite. John has his. But I am not telling you which way to vote, if you will. So join groups, help them, support them. The membership is the lifeblood. So donate to them. $5, $10, $15 doesn't sound like a lot of money, but times 500,000 people, that's a lot of money. And they need that because these cases cost $250,000 to several $1 million to file and go through trials and make its way up to the Supreme Court. It's very expensive. I've seen the cost on some of them. Also, support your state agencies, your state groups, your state orgs. If they're doing the right thing, support them. If they're not, tell them, get on them, get them in line, because now is a time to be fighting. We have, the starting blocks have been dropped. It's time. The race is here. And we need to also, on an individual level, start talking more about the benefits of the Second Amendment, because you hear all the time, the scare tactics, insert state and city here, insert event that happened with this type of item here. Yes, those are terrible things committed by murderers, but they're not committed by law-abiding citizens. And we are a vast majority of the gun owners in this country, and we should be more vocal than a couple people looking to take these items away from us. Start taking people to range, train up your family. Remember that you are your sole provider of safety and security, not the government. And just start talking to people about that. It's not something we need to talk about in speakeasies. The Second Amendment is there. It's there for a reason. It keeps us all free and safe.
I think it would be an interesting time in the country if we saw a sudden shift in people's willingness to talk about the Second Amendment as a whole. I even find myself, I make my living in the gun industry. I find myself in certain situations not screaming from the rooftop, so to speak. I tend to be a little more reserved about all of that stuff because I just don't want to start arguments. There's times that I just don't feel like arguing, and I know in certain environments that can happen. So we talked about FPC, and I think it's only fair that we talk about some other groups that are doing amazing work. We've got Jared, a lot of people over at GOA. I've got some friends over there as well. If I'm not mistaken, they're pushing back as well, right?
Yeah, GOA just filed a lawsuit in North Dakota, federal suit against the ATF, specifically challenging their brand new rule about frames and receivers, or their ghost gun rule. From what I'm told by the people who are involved, it's a very good case. It's 180 pages. I haven't read them all yet, but from what I've seen, it looks fantastic. There are more legal challenges being prepared by FPC and GOA that I'm aware of. So support those who support you. And don't forget the state level groups. There's a lot of good things going on. Gun Owners of California is preparing a potential class action lawsuit against the Attorney General for doxing all the gun owners over there for that big data. They're calling it a data breach, but it's really a data leak because they are the ones who had all the information, and they're the ones who made it available for download.
Right. I would love for people in the comments to educate me on a new group in Pennsylvania to support, because I'm not aware of any. There was one called FOAC, and they got behind some what was it, 80% stuff, and went after. Oddly enough, they kind of went after JSD Supply in this fallout with the gun show thing, and then JSD ended up buying the gun show, which is like the biggest nutsack on the face kind of, like, that was amazing. Anyway, I no longer support that group because of that involvement with that. And I think it will be interesting to see maybe who rises to the top there. Is there other stuff? I know there's, Jared, you're making how many videos a day at this point?
2 to 4, 2 to 5.
2 to 4 videos a day.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
a blistering pace. What
I
else?
can, I'll do like a rapid fire rundown
Yes.
if you want.
Yes,
All
please.
Right. So talking about the Bruin case, the attorneys who successfully won that case and argued it before the Supreme Court, after the decision came out, their law firm basically told them quit or be fired. Their law firm decided to drop all Second Amendment cases based off of pressure from donors and other clientele.
Wow.
So think big dollars. So they left the law firm, and all of the cases that they had in that law firm, there were current 2A cases. Those cases were dropped by that firm. So the two attorneys started their own law firm and picked up those cases. So they will be they're back in action. So that's
okay,
a good thing.
Good.
And
So we didn't lose ground there.
Yeah, look for some headlines there. We have the Democrats calling for Gorsuch and Kavanaugh to be impeached because they have had some decisions that go against the ultimate liberal agenda. We have New York suing several gun manufacturers under their public nuisance law. And other states have passed a similar law within the last week, New Jersey, etc., to try to sue gun manufacturers out of business. And again, these laws post-Bruin all fail text, history, and tradition test, so they will be challenged. We have the assault weapons ban being addressed, which we talked about. The doxing of gun owners in California, 10 years of information gathered by California was given out freely because they lost their permitting scheme, basically. Let's see, we got the Supreme Court remanding all the cases that were pending. We have police. This is one I usually don't talk about a lot, but here in Massachusetts, there were 13 state troopers that lost their jobs because they refused the Fauci ouchie. Well, the colonel of the state police just pulled their license to carry, so he rescinded their right to keep and bear arms, which he doesn't grant because they're no longer employed there. It's not a reason to rescind a license. So more information will be coming with that as soon as that drops.
So for those tracking, the Fauci ouchie is the coronavirus vaccine.
Yes.
So they refused that, and then
they got fired, and then they lost their rights.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. Let's see. We got NICS checks for June continued to skyrocket. So did gun sales.
When you say skyrocket, what does that mean? Because I've been tracking through the news. We've been tracking that, and this year has been down, at least to now. What is skyrocketing to you?
Off the top of my head, I think it's the second highest June on record now.
So it's behind 2021, but above 2020.
Yeah, everything's behind 2021 right now.
Right.
But,
yeah. Okay.
It was an increase based off of the Senate pushing through that gun control. People were running to the stores. Then we have the mayor of Philadelphia called for the ending of all citizens being able to own firearms because he doesn't have the power to regulate firearms, which was hilarious. And then we also have the district attorney's office in Philadelphia saying on record that they don't believe in putting these murderers and people doing these illegal shootings behind bars because that doesn't stop the problem.
You know what else doesn't stop the problem? Stopping law-abiding citizens from exercising their rights. You know what's really interesting? Speaking of the mayor of Philadelphia, I saw him on a live TV interview say that he wants to quit. He's like, I can't wait till I'm done being mayor.
Well, you can leave now.
Like, bro, just quit.
Yeah,
just quit.
You're
Nobody wants you here anyway.
Serious. And then we got news that I broke this morning. There are 3 CEOs. The CEO of Daniel Defense, Marty, and we both know him. Mr. Smith at Smith & Wesson, and Mr. Kalloy over at Ruger. They've all been summoned to sit before the House regulatory. I think it's the regulatory. I'm sorry, but they're going to be the oversight committee. They'll be before them July 20th to answer for their businesses being successful because they've made profit and they're successful making and selling items that are totally legal and protected under the Constitution. This is the second hearing from this committee. The first hearing, there were a lot of victims and emotions pulled. And one of the best part was the actual victims of gun violence who were pro 2A, who were also speaking and telling the value of being able to defend yourself. So there were some parts of that hearing that backfired on the anti-gunners, and I'm hoping that July 20th, these CEOs have some firepower behind them as well.
I like to believe that those folks are going to be great representatives of the gun industry. I have not met Chris Killoy from Ruger. I have not met the powers that be at Smith and Wesson. I have had personal interaction with Marty Daniel though, and I think he is going to be a great representative in that space for sure. I think that will be really interesting. And given what I've seen from Chris Killoy in his, quarterly stuff with the company, I hope that stuff goes well. For our sake, I think it's great that Bill Ruger is not there anymore because he was not exactly pro modern freedom. Let's say that. That's the cleanest way to say that. But now Ruger has done some amazing things. Same with Daniel Defense and Smith and Wesson. So I would hope that this is a opportunity to step forward. And I think what's really, really becoming interesting is the sort of division on the sides. So we've got the left and the right side, these extreme sides, because the folks in the middle are really not that reactive. But what we're starting to see, in my opinion, from folks that are far left versus far right is this it's almost like it's coming back around in a circle, if that makes any sense. I feel like they're being pushed so far apart that they're actually becoming the same thing. And what that means to me is that both are arming themselves, both are ready for a government collapse, and they just disagree on like some very, very small details.
Right.
But I think it's fascinating, honestly. Would you agree?
Yeah,
like, where are you thinking on that?
Yeah, it's. I like to have conversations with people who obviously have different views than I do, whether it's politically or whatever. And then when I see where we stand, I like to talk about the things we have in common.
Sure.
Because
That's
I think
smart.
that helps people realize, like, yeah, maybe that other person is really not an ass clown, because we have a lot of the similarities in our train of thought or our beliefs. And I think if we did that a lot more often, we could bridge this gap or this divide that politics pushes for financial and gain and political expediency. Because once we, the people, realize that we're all the same team. We might have different beliefs or whatever, but we all should be pushing for the same goal, and that is individual liberty under the United States Constitution. I think we can get back to that, but it's going to take a lot of physical effort to do it.
I think it would be really, really interesting in the next 2 to 3 years and beyond. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if the braces would be where they are right now, I would have never called that. I think it's very interesting watching emotion being utilized in as a weapon. I think that's a very, very interesting thing, watching that happen. And I want to reiterate, if you're out there watching this now, you need to support your state level groups. Like Jared said, you need to get behind the national level groups like FPC, GOA, Second Amendment Foundation. And there's probably another 10 that I'm missing that are doing good work. And especially the state level stuff. Pay attention, go subscribe to Jared's channel, because at 2 to 4 videos a day, he is keeping you more up to date than just about anybody out there. So make sure it's Guns and Gadgets on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Go find Jared. Pay attention to what's going on. Also, I'm going to do this because I'm shameless. Go to blackoutcoffee.com/TGC and grab yourself some coffee. What you can do that actually ties into this that I think would be awesome is both FPC and GOA have blends on that website. Yep. So if you would like to get some coffee and support those groups through Blackout, you can do that. So blackoutcoffee.com/GOA. I think Jared's grabbing them. There you go. So you can get some stuff that actually directly supports these groups. And if you do it through our link, we get a little kickback, and that is much appreciated. And I just want to say thank you, Jared, for coming on today and bringing people up to speed as we can. I know it's difficult because there's so much happening. Is there anything you want to add before we roll?
No, dude, it's been an honor to come on. I love coming on, and anything I can do to help you out, let me know. Guys and gals, stay in the know. We're in a period in time in politics where the agenda is clear from both sides of the aisle. But if you have something, if you're a one-issue voter like myself, and that's the Second Amendment, get up to speed with what's coming on, because it's coming so fast and so furious. It's easy to get left behind or to be confused. So, stay in the know. It's the biggest advice I can give you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jared. I appreciate you, brother. And we're going to sign off for now. Guys, if you have questions, slam them down in the comments, and get subscribed to TGC, because we're going to try to keep you as up to date as we can. Of course, go check out Jared's channel and our sponsor, Blackout Coffee. As always, thank you all for watching. We will see you very soon.
Peace.